Admiral Zekthara stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet grow larger on the main screen. His massive fleet of 300 ships floated in perfect formation behind him. Each ship was bigger than a city, covered in weapons that could turn mountains into dust. This was how the Valorian Empire had conquered 2,000 worlds over 10,000 years. Show up with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and add another species to their galactic civilization. Begin standard intimidation protocol, Zekthara commanded. His voice echoed through the bridge where dozens of officers worked at their stations. Everything was precise and orderly, just like every other conquest. The communications officer, a thin Valorian with purple skin, looked up from his console. Admiral, we're receiving multiple signals from the planet. Good, put their leader on screen. Sir, there's a problem. We're getting signals from everywhere, thousands of them. Zekthara frowned. Usually primitive planets had one government that spoke for everyone. Filter out the noise and connect me to their planetary authority. The officer's face turned a darker shade of purple. That's just it, sir. They all claim to be authorities. We have something called the United Nations, but also individual countries, cities, companies, and, sir, someone calling themselves the Flat Earth Society is demanding we prove the planet is round. The Admiral stared at the communication screen. Instead of one leader, dozens of faces appeared, all talking at once. Some wore military uniforms, others business suits, and one person seemed to be wearing a costume with a cape. Greetings, alien visitors, said a woman in a blue suit. I'm the Secretary General of the United Nations, and I welcome you to Earth. Wait a minute, interrupted a man in military dress. The United States military speaks for this planet's defense. Actually, said another voice, the European Union has protocols for first contact situations. Don't forget about China. Added someone else. And India. Russia demands representation. Soon the screen filled with arguing voices. Zekthara watched in growing confusion as humans yelled over each other about who had the right to speak for their planet. Some wanted to surrender immediately, others wanted to fight, and several seemed more interested in trade agreements. Turn off the audio, Zekthara ordered. The blessed silence that followed lasted only seconds before his communications officer spoke again. Sir, they're sending written messages now. Thousands of them. Treaties, surrender documents, trade proposals, and... Sir, someone is asking for your autograph. The Admiral rubbed his forehead. In 10,000 years of galactic conquest, nothing like this had ever happened. Just connect me to whoever seems to be in charge. 20 minutes later, Zekthara found himself talking to a teenage human who claimed to represent Earth's government. So yeah, hi there, alien dude, the young human said cheerfully. I'm totally authorized to negotiate on behalf of Earth. I'm the president of our model UN club, which basically makes me qualified for this, right? You're the planetary leader? Zekthara asked slowly. Well, not exactly, but I figured someone should talk to you guys, and the adults seemed pretty busy arguing about it. So anyway, are you here to invade us or what? Because if you are, could you maybe wait until after prom? I've got a date and everything. Behind the teenager, Zekthara could see what looked like a school classroom with posters about recycling and student elections. How did you access this communication channel? Oh, that was easy. My friend Jake is really good with computers. He hacked into NASA's system like an hour ago. Don't worry though, we didn't break anything important. Zekthara turned to his second-in-command, Captain Veltar. Is this some kind of test? Are they hiding their real leaders? Unknown, sir. Our scans show no unified government structure. They have hundreds of separate nations, each with their own military laws and leaders. That's impossible. How do they coordinate anything? Apparently they don't, sir. They seem to spend most of their time arguing with each other. Back on the screen, the teenager was still talking. So like if you want to conquer us or whatever, you'll probably need to talk to the UN, NATO, the various nuclear powers, and maybe Amazon since they basically control shipping. Oh, and you definitely want to avoid Florida. Trust me on that one. Why would we avoid this Florida place? Zekthara asked, despite himself. Dude, you don't want to know what goes on down there. My uncle lives in Tampa and the stories he tells. Anyway, are you guys planning to destroy our cities and stuff? Because my mom will be really mad if you mess up her garden. Zekthara closed his eyes and took a deep breath. We are the Valorian Empire. We command a fleet of 300 warships. We have conquered 2,000 worlds. Surrender now and your species will be integrated into our galactic civilization with minimal casualties. Cool. That sounds awesome. Do we get space travel? because that would be so sweet. Oh, but I should probably mention that humans are kind of weird. Like really weird. We do a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. All primitive species say that. You will adapt to our ways. I don't think you understand. We're the species that invented something called reality TV, where we watch other people live their boring lives. We made that entertaining. We created social media where we argue with strangers about everything. We have competitions where people eat hot peppers until they cry. For fun. Captain Veltar leaned over to whisper in Zekathara's ear, "Sir, our cultural analysts are reviewing their public information networks. The humans appear to have something called pineapple pizza, which has caused civil wars in their comment sections." "Pineapple pizza?" Zekathara repeated. "Yeah," the teenager said brightly. "Some people love it, some people hate it, and everyone has strong opinions. Wait until you hear about our debates on toilet paper orientation." "Toilet paper orientation? Over or under, man? It's serious stuff. My parents almost got divorced over it." Zekathara stared at the screen. In his thousands of years of life, he had never encountered anything like this. "Are all humans like you?" "Oh no, I'm pretty normal. You should meet my friend Kevin. He collects bottle caps and knows all the words to every song from the 1980s. Or my neighbor Mrs. Peterson, who grows prize-winning tomatoes and threatens to poison anyone who steps on her lawn. And these people represent your civilization?" "Well, yeah. I mean, we also have scientists and doctors and stuff, but mostly we're just people doing weird human things. Oh, you should totally visit during Comic-Con. That's when we dress up like fictional characters and spend way too much money on merchandise." Zekathara turned away from the screen and addressed his bridge crew. "Status report. Are there any signs of hidden military installations, secret weapons, anything that explains this behavior?" "Negative, sir. What you see appears to be what they are. They're just chaotic." "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're now receiving messages from something called Twitter, where thousands of humans are sharing their opinions about our arrival. Many are asking if we accept cryptocurrency." Admiral Zekathara looked out at the blue planet below and felt something he had never experienced in his long military career: complete confusion. The greatest empire in galactic history had just encountered a species that seemed completely immune to intimidation, not because they were brave, but because they were too disorganized to properly surrender. "Sir?" Captain Veltar asked. "What are your orders?" Zekathara continued staring at Earth, watching the swirling clouds and thinking about pineapple pizza and toilet paper orientations. "I honestly have no idea." 3 weeks after first contact, Admiral Zekathara found himself doing something he never thought possible: agreeing to a cultural exchange program with humans. The idea came from Dr. Thelvar, the Empire's chief xenosociologist, who insisted that understanding human chaos was the key to conquering them. "We need to study them systematically," Dr. Thelvar had explained. "Every species follows logical patterns. Once we understand their social structure, we can integrate them properly." Now, watching the human shuttle dock with his flagship, Zekathara wondered if this was a mistake. The shuttle itself looked wrong. Instead of sleek military design, it was painted with bright colors and had writing on the side that said, "Earth's Greatest Hits World Tour 2157. The airlock opened and humans began walking onto his ship. First came what appeared to be their official representatives, men and women in business suits carrying briefcases and looking professional. Behind them came others that Zekathara couldn't quite categorize: young people with backpacks, someone carrying a guitar, and a man wearing a shirt with a picture of an alligator and text reading, "Florida man, hold my beer." "Welcome aboard," Zekathara said formally to the group's apparent leader, a middle-aged woman named Ambassador Chen. "Thank you for this opportunity," she replied. "We're excited to learn about your civilization." "And we about yours," said Dr. Thelvar, stepping forward with his team of scientists. Each carried recording devices and analysis tools. "We have prepared comprehensive questionnaires about your social hierarchies, authority structures, and cultural norms." The humans looked at each other and smiled in a way that made Zekathara nervous. Meanwhile, on the Empire's capital world of Valeros Prime, a group of Valorian cultural observers prepared to visit Earth. They had studied thousands of species and considered themselves experts in xenosociology. Each carried detailed notes about human society based on their intercepted communications. "Remember," said lead observer Kexmon to his team. Primitive species always have simple social structures. Leaders at the top, workers at the bottom. They may have some unusual customs, but underneath, all societies follow the same basic patterns. The Valorian delegation arrived on Earth expecting to find a typical planetary government. Instead, they found themselves in New York City during rush hour, standing in Times Square while millions of lights flashed advertisements for products they couldn't understand. "Where is the planetary capital?" Observer Yelness asked their human guide, a cheerful woman named Sarah who worked for something called the State Department. "Well, we don't really have one," Sarah explained. "The UN is here in New York, but each country has its own capital. The US capital is in Washington, D.C., but individual states have their own capitals too, and cities have mayors and counties have different governments. But who has ultimate authority?" Kexmon interrupted. "That depends. Authority over what?" The question broke the Valorian observer's understanding of how societies worked. On the ship, similar confusion was happening in reverse. Dr. Thelvar interviewed Ambassador Chen while his assistants took detailed notes. "Explain your caste system," he began. "We don't have one," Chen replied. "All advanced societies have caste systems. How do you determine who rules and who serves?" "We vote." "Vote?" "Citizens choose their leaders in elections." Dr. Thelvar made a note. "So the wisest and strongest individuals naturally win these contests?" "Not exactly. Sometimes the most popular person wins. Sometimes it's whoever has the best campaign ads. One time we elected someone mostly because people thought he was funny on TV. The Valorian scientist stared at her. "You choose leaders based on entertainment value?" "Sometimes. Democracy is complicated." While the official interviews continued, other interactions were happening throughout the ship. The humans had split up to explore, completely ignoring the Valorians' attempts to keep them in designated areas. A college student named Marcus had somehow ended up in engineering, where he was showing Valorian technicians pictures of his girlfriend and explaining something called social media. "So you voluntarily share personal information with strangers?" asked Chief Engineer Polvex. "Yeah. Look, here's what I had for breakfast, here's my opinion about a movie, and here's a video of my cat knocking things off a table." "Why?" "Because it's fun. Oh, and you get these little hearts when people like your post. It makes you feel good." The Valorian engineers gathered around Marcus's phone, fascinated by the concept of sharing mundane information for emotional rewards. Within an hour, they were taking pictures of their workstations and posting them to something called Instagram. In another part of the ship, the Florida man, who had introduced himself as "Just Call Me Randy," was teaching a group of elite Valorian guards how to play poker. "The key," Randy explained while dealing cards, "is to make the other guy think you have better cards than you do. It's all about the bluff." Commander Zarketh, leader of the guards, studied his cards carefully. "This seems inefficient. Why not simply show your cards and let the strongest hand win? Where's the fun in that? Half the game is psychological warfare. Watch this." Randy pushed a pile of snacks into the center of the table. "I'm all in." The Valorian guards looked at their own cards, then at Randy's confident expression, then folded one by one. Randy grinned and revealed his cards. He had nothing. "You had the weakest hand," Zarketh said in amazement. "Yep, but you didn't know that. That's the beauty of it." Within hours, the concept of bluffing had spread through the ship's security forces. Valorian guards who had been trained in absolute honesty and direct communication were now practicing deception as a recreational activity. Back on Earth, the Valorian observers were having their own revelations. They had expected to study human authority structures, but instead found themselves in a coffee shop watching people ignore their boss's phone calls. "The subordinate is directly defying the superior," Yelness whispered to Kexmon. "I see it. But I don't understand it," Kexmon whispered back. Their guide Sarah overheard them. "Oh, that's Janet. She's off work right now. Her boss can't make her answer work calls during her personal time. But the hierarchy doesn't apply after 5 p.m. Workers have rights." This concept, that authority had limits and schedules, broke something fundamental in the Valorian observers' understanding of society. For 10,000 years, their civilization had been built on absolute hierarchy. The idea that someone could simply turn off their obligation to obey was revolutionary. The real chaos began when both groups started sharing their discoveries. The Valorian engineers who had learned about social media began posting pictures of their daily lives. Valorian workers across the Empire saw these posts and wanted to try it themselves. Within days, Valoran life was trending across their galaxy-wide communication network. The poker-playing guards started teaching other Valorians about recreational deception. Suddenly, Valorian citizens were playing games where lying was not only acceptable but encouraged. Parents were confused when their children started saying they had finished their homework while smiling in ways that suggested otherwise. Most disturbing to the Empire's leaders was the concept of work-life balance that the Earth observers reported. Valorian workers began asking questions like, why do we work 16-hour days? And what happens if we just don't show up sometimes? Dr. Thelver sent increasingly frantic reports to the Empire's high command. The humans don't follow any logical social patterns, he wrote. They simultaneously respect and mock authority, follow laws while constantly breaking them, and organize themselves into thousands of contradictory groups that somehow function together. Our models can't predict their behavior, because they can't predict their own behavior. Admiral Zekthara read these reports while watching Randy teach his bridge crew how to play a game called charades. His disciplined officers were making wild gestures and shouting random words while Randy laughed and offered encouragement. Admiral, Captain Veltar said quietly, the crew is requesting something called Casual Friday. What's Casual Friday? Apparently it's when you don't have to wear your uniform and can dress comfortably. Zekthara looked around his bridge. For the first time in his military career, he wondered what it would be like to command a ship where people weren't afraid to be themselves. The cultural exchange was supposed to help the Empire understand humanity. Instead, it was teaching them to question everything they thought they knew about civilization itself. Admiral Zekthara decided that the best way to impress the humans and restore some dignity to the Empire was through a demonstration of superior technology. If cultural exchange had failed to show Valorian superiority, surely their advanced science would put these chaotic beings in their proper place. Prepare the main display hall, he ordered. We'll show them our greatest achievements. Energy shields faster than light drives, molecular manufacturing, gravity manipulation. They'll understand they're dealing with a civilization far beyond their capabilities. The humans gathered in the ship's largest chamber, where Valorian engineers had set up impressive displays of their technology. Dr. Sarah Chen led the human delegation, which included several Earth scientists, engineers, and Randy the Florida man, who had somehow become an unofficial ambassador, despite everyone's attempts to send him home. Chief Technology Officer Mordek stepped forward proudly. He had overseen the Empire's technological development for 3 centuries and had never met a species that didn't gasp in awe at Valorian achievements. Behold, he announced dramatically, activating a shimmering energy field around himself. Our personal defense shields. They can stop any projectile weapon, deflect energy beams, and maintain structural integrity under extreme conditions. The humans watched politely and applauded when the demonstration ended. Very impressive, said Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a physicist from MIT. The energy efficiency looks good. Can we see how it works? Mordek blinked. Usually primitive species asked fearful questions like, are you going to kill us with that? Not technical questions about energy efficiency. The underlying principles are quite complex, he said carefully. We love complex, said Dr. James Kim, an engineer from Seoul. Is it based on electromagnetic field manipulation or something more exotic? Despite himself, Mordek found himself explaining the technology. The humans listened intently, asked detailed questions, and took notes. More disturbing, they asked questions he hadn't considered. What happens if you reverse the polarity? Asked Dr. Walsh. Why would you reverse the polarity? Just curious. Sometimes reversing things gives you new applications. Have you tried modulating the frequency? Dr. Kim added. What about coupling it with gravitational fields? Suggested Dr. Chen. Mordek realized the humans weren't just watching his demonstration. They were analyzing it, improving it, and thinking of ways to modify it. These are advanced concepts that require years of study. Oh, we're fast learners, Dr. Walsh said cheerfully. Could we get a look at the actual hardware? Before Mordek could object, Randy stepped forward. Yeah, let's pop the hood on this baby. I used to work on cars before I got into alligator wrestling. You wrestle alligators? Asked Captain Veltar. Only on weekends. Anyway, machines are machines, right? They all got parts that do stuff. Mordek tried to maintain control of the demonstration. Perhaps we should move on to our faster-than-light propulsion system. The FTL drive demonstration went worse. The humans didn't just ask questions, they started suggesting improvements. Your quantum tunnel stabilizers are impressive, Dr. Kim noted. But have you considered using a parallel processing array to reduce the energy requirements? Or adding redundant safety systems in case of quantum cascade failure? Dr. Walsh added. What if you just put some duct tape on the flickering parts? Randy suggested. Works for everything else. Duct tape? Mordek asked weakly. Universal repair tool, Randy explained. If it's moving and shouldn't be, duct tape. If it's not moving and should be, WD-40. Basic engineering. The Valorian engineers looked confused, but Dr. Kim was nodding thoughtfully. He's got a point. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones. By the third demonstration, molecular manufacturing, the humans had completely taken over. They gathered around the machinery, pointing out design inefficiencies and discussing modifications. Dr. Chen pulled out a tablet and started sketching improvements. If you adjust the quantum resonance frequency here, she said, and add some basic error correction here, you could probably increase efficiency by 30%. Also, Dr. Walsh added, why are you limited to building one thing at a time? Parallel processing would speed this up dramatically. Mordek watched in horror as the humans casually discussed modifications to technology that had taken his civilization centuries to develop. These improvements you suggest, they would take years to implement and test. Not really, Dr. Kim said. Most of this is just software optimization. Give us a few days and we'll have it running better. Days? Well, maybe a week if we want to be really thorough. Randy, didn't you say you had some ideas about the assembly process? Randy was studying the molecular assembler with the same expression he probably used when examining broken car engines. Yeah, this thing's way too complicated. You got all these fancy quantum doohickeys when you could just use a simple mechanical grabber system. Cheaper, faster, easier to fix when it breaks. Mechanical solutions to quantum problems, Dr. Walsh mused. That's actually brilliant in its simplicity. Mordek felt his world crumbling. You can't solve quantum assembly problems with mechanical systems. Why not? Randy asked. Problem with fancy stuff is it breaks fancy. Simple stuff just breaks and you can fix simple. The final blow came when 12-year-old Emily Chen, Dr. Chen's daughter who had somehow snuck onto the shuttle, raised her hand politely. Excuse me, Mr. Alien Engineer, but why don't you just combine all these technologies? Like use the shields to protect the FTL drive, use the FTL drive to power the assembler, and use the assembler to build better shields. The Valorian engineers stared at the child. In 3 centuries, none of them had thought to integrate their technologies in such a simple way. That's actually quite logical, admitted Mordek. Plus, Emily continued, if you hook it all up to a computer system like my dad's phone, you could probably control it all with an app. Maybe add some games too, so operating it isn't boring. Games? Mordek repeated. Sure, make it fun to use. Like every time you successfully manufacture something, you get points. And you could have different difficulty levels for different materials. Dr. Kim was furiously taking notes. Gamification of advanced manufacturing processes. That could revolutionize user interfaces. Could you make it play music too? Emily asked. Everything's better with music, Randy nodded sagely. Kid's got a point. I put a radio in my airboat and suddenly wrestling alligators became way more fun. That evening, Mordek sent a report to the Empire's High Command that would go down in Valorian history as the most disturbing document ever filed. The humans have not only understood our technology, he wrote, they have improved it. In 6 hours, they identified design flaws that we missed in 6 centuries. Their engineer named Randy solved our most complex problems using something called duct tape and common sense. A human child suggested integration solutions that our top scientists never considered. More troubling, they don't see our technology as advanced. They see it as a good starting point. They are already planning improvements to improvements they haven't built yet. One of them asked if our FTL drive could be modified to deliver pizza across interstellar distances. When I explained that was impossible, he said, everything's impossible until someone does it, and started drawing plans. Most disturbing of all, they have offered to share their improvements with us. Not as part of a trade agreement or peace treaty. They just want to share because, and I quote, cool stuff should be shared with everyone. They seem genuinely excited about making our technology better, not for conquest or profit, but because they find the engineering challenge entertaining. Sir, I respectfully request reassignment to the farthest corner of the galaxy. Humans have made me question everything I know about science, engineering, and the fundamental nature of technological progress. Admiral Zekthara read the report while watching human and Valorian engineers working together in his ship's workshops. They were laughing, arguing, and building things that shouldn't exist. In one corner, Randy was teaching a group of quantum physicists how to troubleshoot problems by hitting it with a wrench and seeing what happens. The Empire's greatest technological achievements had been casually improved by beings who thought duct tape was a universal solution and wanted to add video games to everything. Zekthara realized that humanity hadn't just met Valorian technology as equals. They had looked at 10,000 years of advanced engineering and asked, that's nice, but what if we made it better? The most terrifying part was that they actually could. High Chancellor Vextoran of the Valorian Empire stood before the Supreme Council, his purple skin darker than usual with frustration. Cultural exchange had failed. Technology demonstrations had backfired. The humans remained stubbornly chaotic and impossible to categorize. It was time for the Empire's most devastating weapon. Honorable Councilors, he announced, I propose we deploy the Infinite Forms Protocol. The council chamber fell silent. The Infinite Forms Protocol was legendary, a bureaucratic system so complex, so perfectly designed to crush the spirit of rebellion that it had reduced warrior species to whimpering compliance within months. No civilization had ever resisted it. The protocol has never failed, Vexitoran continued. When faced with infinite paperwork, endless regulations, and bureaucratic procedures that loop back on themselves, even the most chaotic species eventually surrender just to make the forms stop coming. Council member Yelthek nodded approvingly. The beauty of the protocol is that it doesn't destroy civilizations. It exhausts them into submission. They become so tired of filling out forms that they'll accept any authority that promises to handle the paperwork for them. Precisely, Vextoran said. Deploy the Infinite Forms Protocol. Within 6 months, the humans will be begging us to conquer them properly. On Earth, the first wave of Valorian bureaucracy arrived through their established communication channels. Every government on the planet received identical messages. To continue existing as a recognized civilization, please complete the attached forms. The initial package was modest, only 3,000 forms covering basic planetary registration, species classification, atmospheric composition reports, and requests for permission to have gravity. President Martinez of the United States looked at the forms covering her desk and turned to her chief of staff. What is this? Alien paperwork, Madam President. They want us to fill out forms to officially exist. How many forms? 3,000. So far. President Martinez, who had survived Congress for 20 years, smiled grimly. Get me the head of the IRS. Meanwhile, across the globe, similar responses were forming. The British Prime Minister called for the head of Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. The German Chancellor contacted their federal tax authority. The Japanese Prime Minister reached out to their notoriously complex bureaucracy. Every major government was preparing for what they recognized as bureaucratic warfare. But the real response came from an unexpected source. Dolores Fitzgerald had worked for the Department of Motor Vehicles in New Jersey for 37 years. She had seen every type of paperwork disaster imaginable. She had dealt with people who couldn't prove they existed, forms that created themselves, and computer systems that seemed actively hostile to human happiness. When the alien forms arrived at her office, she took one look at them and snorted. Amateur hour, she muttered, and got to work. The Valorian Empire had never encountered someone like Dolores. While their protocol was designed to confuse and exhaust, she was designed by decades of experience to process the impossible. She filled out the forms with mechanical precision, but more importantly, she began to understand their structure. These forms reference other forms, she told her supervisor. Forms that reference other forms. It's a loop system designed to keep you busy forever. So we can't complete them? Oh, we can complete them. But we're going to complete them properly. Dolores smiled in a way that had once made a grown man cry when his vehicle registration was rejected for the 15th time. According to Regulation 47B subsection 12, any form that references a non-existent form becomes null and void. And according to Section 15 of their own protocol, null forms can be countered with a request for administrative review. What does that mean? It means we're going to bury them in their own paperwork. While Dolores worked her dark magic, other responses were forming across Earth. The Pentagon assigned their most experienced procurement officers, people who had spent decades dealing with defense contractors and cost overruns. These were individuals who could find loopholes in reality itself. Colonel Sarah Walker, a veteran of the military-industrial complex, reviewed the alien forms with professional interest. They want us to register our nuclear weapons, okay, but they haven't specified which forms to use for weapons that don't technically exist. What do you mean, don't exist? Asked her aide. According to Form 2847C, any weapon system under development isn't considered to exist until deployment. So we register our deployed nukes with one set of forms, our theoretical nukes with another set, our dismantled nukes with a third set, and our fictional nukes with a fourth set. We have fictional nukes? We do now. I'm declaring our entire science fiction movie industry as a weapons development program. Every movie with explosions is now a documentary about theoretical military capabilities. The Valorian Empire began receiving responses to their Infinite Forms protocol within days. They expected confused questions or frustrated complaints. Instead, they got properly completed paperwork, all of it. Not only had the humans filled out every form correctly, they had found forms the Empire had forgotten about. Forms from previous versions of the protocol, forms that had been superseded by other forms, forms that existed only in legal theory. They filed a request for administrative review on our request for administrative review, reported Administrator Kesvel, his voice rising with panic. They're challenging our authority to challenge their authority to question our forms. How is that possible? Demanded Chancellor Vex Torin. They found subsection 847 of Regulation 12,294. It allows for counter-administrative actions when the original administrative action is deemed unnecessarily burdensome by a qualified administrative professional. What's a qualified administrative professional? According to their interpretation, anyone who has worked in bureaucracy for more than 20 years. Vex Torin felt a chill run down his spine. How many qualified administrative professionals do they have? Millions, sir. Their entire planet seems to run on bureaucracy. They have departments for departments. They have forms to request forms to request forms. Sir, they out-bureaucrat us. The situation rapidly spiraled out of control. For every form the Empire sent, Earth responded with 17 forms demanding clarification, verification, notarization, and administrative review. When the Empire tried to clarify, Earth requested forms to clarify the clarifications. Dolores Fitzgerald, now recognized as Earth's Supreme Administrative Commander, a title she had created for herself using Form 3847X, sent a comprehensive response to the Valorian Empire's bureaucratic assault. Dear Empire people, her letter began, thank you for your interest in conquering our planet. Unfortunately, your conquest application is incomplete. You have failed to properly register your fleet with our Department of Transportation, Form DOT 2T847, obtain environmental impact statements for your ships, EPA Form 9975, or apply for business licenses to operate in our solar system, Form BZ443 through BZ997. Additionally, your threat to integrate our species into your galactic civilization requires submission of Forms HHS 2847 through HHS 3456, as this constitutes a major demographic change requiring federal oversight. Please complete the attached 47,000 forms and resubmit your conquest application within 30 business days. Note that incomplete applications will be rejected and require restarting the entire process. Also, your ships are parked in a no-standing zone. Please move them immediately or face towing and impoundment fees of $47,000 per ship per day. The letter was signed, Dolores Fitzgerald, Supreme Administrative Commander, Department of Making Sure Everything is Properly Filed. Admiral Zekthara read the letter while Admiral Vex Torin sat in his chair, staring at the ceiling with the glazed expression of someone who had stared into the administrative abyss. They want us to fill out forms to conquer them, Zekthara said slowly. 47,000 forms. Vextorin whispered. I tried to read them. I got to Form 847 and started crying. What was Form 847? An application to apply for permission to request a review of our application to apply for conquest permits. Captain Veltar approached hesitantly. Sir, we're receiving more communications from Earth. More forms? No, sir, a bill. A bill? For unauthorized orbital occupation without proper parking permits. The total is, Veltar swallowed hard, 14.7 billion Earth dollars. What happens if we don't pay? According to Earth Regulation 24C, our ships will be towed and sold at auction to cover fees and costs. Zekthara looked out at his massive fleet of warships, imagining them being towed away by human space tow trucks driven by the bureaucratic equivalent of Dolores Fitzgerald. Sir, Veltar continued, there's more. They've applied for a retroactive tax assessment on our invasion. Apparently, threatening a planet constitutes doing business in their solar system, which requires paying back taxes for the entire time we've been here. How much? With interest and penalties, approximately 47 billion years worth of taxes. Admiral Zekthara closed his eyes and tried to imagine, explaining to the High Council that the Empire's most devastating weapon had been defeated by humans, who were better at paperwork than they were, the Infinite Forms Protocol, which had crushed the spirits of 1,000 worlds, had met its match in a species that had turned bureaucracy into an art form. Earth hadn't just survived the Empire's bureaucratic assault, they had counterattacked with the ad the Valorian Empire was collapsing. And it was all humanity's fault. Supreme Chancellor Vextorin stood in the Grand Council chamber on Valoros Prime, watching reports flood in from across their galactic civilization. Every screen showed the same thing: chaos, rebellion, and worst of all, Valorians having fun. Report from Sector 7, announced Council Member Yeltek, his voice heavy with despair. The entire Rigel system has declared casual century and refuses to wear official uniforms. Sector 12 has adopted something called democracy, added another counselor. They're voting on everything. Military orders, work schedules, even what to have for lunch. And Sector 15? Vextorin asked, though he dreaded the answer. They've opened a jazz club. The chamber fell silent. Jazz music was perhaps the most dangerous human export of all. It was music that didn't follow rules, that encouraged improvisation, that suggested maybe rules weren't as important as everyone thought. How did this happen? Vextorin demanded. We are the Valorian Empire. We have maintained perfect order for 10,000 years. The answer came from the back of the chamber, where Admiral Zekthara stood looking like someone who had aged several decades in the past few months. It started with the cultural exchange, he said quietly. Our people met humans and learned that life could be different. Zekthara activated a holographic display showing the current state of the Empire. Instead of the ordered hierarchical structure that had existed for millennia, the display showed a chaotic web of interconnected systems where Valorians were trading, talking, laughing, and generally behaving like humans. The plague began on my ship, Zekthara continued. My crew learned about Casual Friday and started questioning why they had to wear uncomfortable uniforms. Then they learned about personal time and started asking why they worked 16-hour days. Then they discovered human rights and began demanding better working conditions. And it spread? Vextorin asked, like wildfire. Every Valorian who interacted with humans became infected with ideas about personal freedom and work-life balance. They started sharing these concepts through our communication networks. Soon, Valorians across the galaxy were asking questions like, why do I have to follow orders? And what if I just don't? On the main screen, a news report showed thousands of Valorians on different worlds participating in something called protests, a human concept that involved gathering in groups and complaining loudly about things they didn't like. They're demanding representation in government, the reporter explained. They want something called elections where they choose their own leaders instead of following hereditary authority. Vextorin rubbed his temples. And the military? In complete disarray, Zekthara admitted. Half the fleet has formed what they call unions and are demanding better pay and shorter shifts. The other half has discovered gambling and spends most of their time playing poker instead of maintaining discipline. What about our secret police? They've taken up social media and spend their time posting pictures of their meals instead of monitoring dissidents. The final blow came when Communication Officer Pelvor burst into the chamber with urgent news. Supreme Chancellor, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Another tax bill? Vex Torin asked wearily. No, sir. It's a formal surrender offer. They're surrendering? No, sir. They're offering to accept our surrender. The chamber erupted in confused voices as the communication screen activated. To everyone's surprise, the human delegation was led by Dolores Fitzgerald, the DMV worker who had single-handedly defeated the Infinite Forms Protocol. Greetings, Valorian Empire, she said in her matter-of-fact voice. We understand you're having some administrative difficulties with your galactic government. We're prepared to offer assistance. Assistance? Vex Torin sputtered. Your paperwork is a mess, Dolores explained. Your tax codes haven't been updated in centuries. Your military regulations contradict each other. And don't get me started on your permit system for interstellar travel. It's chaos. Our system has worked for 10,000 years. Has it, though? Because from what we can see, your people are pretty unhappy. They're calling us asking for help setting up democratic governments, worker protection laws, and something called weekends. Behind Dolores, other humans were visible. Dr. Chen was discussing technology upgrades with Valorian engineers. Randy was teaching a group of former soldiers how to start a small business, and several human lawyers were explaining constitutional law to fascinated Valorian rebels. What do you want? Vex Torin asked. Nothing, Dolores replied. We just think you could run things better, more efficiently. With less paperwork and more happiness, and you want to conquer us? Conquer you? Honey, we don't want to conquer anybody. We just want to help you figure out how to make your civilization work better for everyone. Dr. Chen leaned into the frame. We've been analyzing your government structure, and we think we can reduce your administrative overhead by about 90%, while increasing citizen satisfaction by 400%. How? Simple. Stop trying to control everything and let people make their own decisions about most things. Focus government on the big stuff. Defense, infrastructure, making sure nobody starves. Let people figure out the rest for themselves. Randy appeared next to Dr. Chen. Plus, y'all need to learn how to party. All work and no play makes for grumpy aliens. Vex Torin looked around the chamber at his fellow counselors. They all wore the same expression of confused defeat. The empire that had conquered 2,000 worlds was being offered guidance by the species they had tried to conquer. And if we refuse your assistance? Dolores shrugged. Then you refuse. Your choice. But your people are already changing. You can either help guide that change or get swept away by it. Either way, the old empire is done. As if to prove her point, reports began flooding in from across Valorian space. On Rigel Prime, Valorian workers had organized the galaxy's first labor strike. On Centauri 7, young Valorians had formed a band and were touring the sector playing fusion jazz. On dozens of worlds, Valorians were opening small businesses, writing poetry, and falling in love with members of other species. The rigid caste system that had defined Valorian society for millennia was crumbling as people discovered they could be whatever they wanted to be. Your Valorians are opening restaurants, Dr. Chen reported cheerfully. Apparently, once they learned about customer service and making people happy, cooking became really popular. They're also taking up art, added another human. Did you know your people are naturally gifted at sculpture? They've been suppressing that for centuries. Admiral Zekathera stepped forward. Supreme Chancellor, I request permission to speak freely. Granted, the humans are right. Our people are happier than they've been in centuries. Crime is down, productivity is up, and for the first time in my life I look forward to going to work. Because of Casual Friday, because my crew treats me like a person instead of a rank, because we work together instead of following orders blindly, because we've learned that authority should serve people, not the other way around. Vex Torin looked around the chamber one more time. Every screen showed Valorians embracing human concepts. Democracy, individual rights, jazz music, small business ownership, and the radical idea that life should be enjoyable. What are your terms? He asked Dolores. No terms, she replied. No conquest, no tribute, no forced integration. Just friendship, trade, and maybe some cultural exchange programs. Oh, and we'd like to set up some universities on your worlds. Education is important, and tourism, Randy added. Some of your planets look awesome for vacations. You want a vacation on our worlds? Sure. And we figure some of your people might want to visit Earth. Experience democracy, try some pizza, Maybe catch a baseball game. Bextorin realized that the humans weren't offering conquest. They were offering partnership, not as superiors to inferiors, but as equals sharing ideas and learning from each other. He began, then stopped. For the first time in his long life, he didn't know what to say. Dolores smiled kindly. Take your time. This is a big decision. Maybe start small. Let your people choose their own work schedules, try some elections for local governments, see how it goes. And if we make mistakes? Everyone makes mistakes. That's how you learn. The trick is making sure your mistakes don't hurt people. 6 months later, Admiral Zekthara stood on the observation deck of his ship, now called the Democratic Experiment by his crew, watching a joint human-Valorian colony being established on a previously uninhabited world. Below, humans and Valorians worked together building houses, schools, and what appeared to be a combination jazz club and barbecue restaurant. The Valorian Empire still existed, but it was nothing like the rigid hierarchy it had been. It was messier, louder, and infinitely more complicated. It was also happier, more creative, and more prosperous than it had ever been. The greatest military force in galactic history had been defeated not by superior weapons or brilliant strategy, but by the simple human belief that life should be fun, fair, and free. And despite themselves, the Valorians had to admit that the humans had been right all along.